welcome to another episode of the Always Be Testing podcast. I'm your host, Ty DeGrange, and I'm really excited to talk to Richard Wright today. Hey, Richard, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's so good to see you. It's been a pleasure to knowing you for a very long time and to stay in
Yeah,
touch and excited to dive into things with you today.
yeah, likewise. Yeah, I was thinking it's probably getting off over 10 years ago. Probably when we first met, obviously with eBay.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. What a great affiliate experience, which we'll dive into.
yeah,
So for those of you who don't know, Richard Wright is an amazing affiliate marketing practitioner, very experienced, professional, thoughtful, knows his stuff. He's based out of the UK and has been on all sides of the affiliate marketing game, from agency to brand to consulting. Knows more than most in the space. I definitely am thrilled to have him on. He's a wealth of knowledge. So really going to be a treat to chat with him today.
Oh, thank you. That's very, very flattered to hear you say all of that. Sometimes feel like I suppose a lot of people um, you forget sometimes how long you've been in the industry and maybe how much knowledge you've acquired. But yeah, certainly been around a
It's
long
it,
time.
it's well deserved. It's well deserved.
Thank
And
you.
and maybe maybe share, maybe just getting going. Like how did you get into the affiliate marketing world?
Yeah, I think it's supposed like a lot of people, a little bit by accident. So I actually, when I left school, I didn't go to college right away. I sort of kind of, yeah, I wasn't really in the right frame of mind. We'll put it there. But I ended up working in insurance for 5 years as an insurance broker, and I got really bored doing that. And what I'd always wanted to do was work in advertising marketing. And so I grew up in the 80s and 90s with those amazing TV brand ads. It's a real sort of purple period for that kind of advertising. So I went to college about 24, 25, just thinking about advertising, TV advertising, that kind of, it's cool stuff. And obviously, digital marketing was really starting to gain prominence at the time. So while I was on my course, I was really wanting to zone in on those modules. So at that time, there was 10 modules. Digital marketing was just one, and it was an elective. So I made sure I was on that module, learned what I could. Whatever I was learning was pretty obsolete. I'll be honest at the time. But as soon as I graduated in 2007, I knew I needed to get a job. I knew I needed to get a job in digital. And literally in the middle of my exams, hadn't even completed my degree course yet. I had the interview with ROI, which is how we eventually got connected with eBay. And that turned out, and it was affiliate marketing. I'd never heard of it, didn't know what it was. All I knew was they were going to hire me. It was in digital marketing, and it sounded cool, cool company to work for. And then yeah, that's how I got into it. And yeah, it's been one of those. It's been a brilliant career. It's just one of those ones that I think, I'm not a sort of super techie guy. I'm not a super, numbers accountant guy. It needs quite a broad range of skill sets. I think, you've got to be good relationships. You've got to be commercial. You've got to be reasonably tech savvy, and you've got to be able to bring it all together. So I felt that sort of suits my skill set quite well. But it's yeah, it's a fun industry. There's a lot of relationships and things like that. So yeah, so I've stuck at it all these years.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, and I think you nailed it with how it like blends together so many aspects, and there's focus data aspects, there's partnership aspects, there's human
Mm,
aspects of the business and the job. So um, yeah, it really resonates with me, especially because there's a lot of stuff that gets packed into affiliate marketing, and that not a lot of people are aware of. Um, so that's really interesting.
yeah.
Um, what's been your observation about kind of that UK market? Obviously, you're coming from that perspective, but you've also had exposure to so many other markets. Maybe I'm just curious to learn a little bit about how do you maybe see how it maybe operates a little bit differently than the US market and other regions.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think the biggest difference we see, particularly when I look at the UK and the US, with the US, I think the budgets that required for, when you're buying, investing in media with, some of the bigger partners, so much bigger than the UK. So in the UK, there's, if you wanted to buy a week long package of exposure on, say, a cashback site, you might be talking, $2,000 to $5,000, whereas in the US it could be $20,000 to $30,000. And obviously, the size of the market in the US is so much bigger. But I definitely know that when people are, in the UK managing programs and then branch out into the US, that's always a bit of a shock for what the costs are for additional media and things. And so that's one that's definitely kind of jumped out, I think. And when we start looking at maybe going to Europe, so I think yeah, different countries have got different levels of understanding of affiliates. So I think probably my experience, probably Germany, maybe probably similar kind of levels of uh, acceptance and knowledge and affiliate marketing is sort of a norm, but sort of you get into some maybe kind of France, Italy, Spain. It's a little as a model, it's sort of less advanced, I'd say. Yeah, so it's certainly not. This is one of the key things I think I learned with when I was working with eBay, because we had this idea in the UK. We had a way of working and some publishers that we really knew how they worked, what motivated them, and we fondly thought that we could just go to France and do the same thing, in Italy and Spain, and it just didn't work. And I remember speaking to a colleague who was at eBay and said that the even just buying things, e-commerce, the whole thing is very different. So, in Italy, for example, they were explaining that the delivery, the postal service is just not reliable. No one in their right mind would buy a TV, from a website. I mean, I don't know if that's still the same now. This is going back a bit, but there's a lot of other things that you sort of need to consider of how things work in the UK, which is a small island. It's very easy to deliver things around the place, but other countries very different. Other countries, I think Spain, people don't have credit cards like that, like they do here. It's not nearly this, you know what I mean. So there's so many local market nuances that make e-commerce and therefore affiliate marketing more challenging. And the key thing is you really need to sort of approach each market with a bit of an open mind, speak to people there, and not have this mindset of, oh, this works in the UK, it'll work everywhere, or oh, this works in the US, everybody's going to work like this. So there are a lot of
Interesting.
local market nuances, but I think it all comes down to, it's well, like with a lot of things, is that customer first approach. Is aware of how are they actually buying things, what are the places where they go, what makes that convenient, and then that sort of really helps you understand. Okay, these are the partners I need to work with.
That
Yeah,
makes sense. And having
fascinating.
such good, yeah, it is fascinating. Having such experience, broadly with specific programs and, being to have visibility into like multiple, European programs and UK programs, like have you noticed like a particular maybe estimated amount of overlap between countries? Or I'm just curious to know. I would imagine it's quite specific, and there's obviously a lot of partners that can expand beyond, go multi-country, US to UK, Canada, multiple coverage across Europe. But how much is that overlap a thing versus more country specific in your experience?
Um, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It's because some things will overlap for sure. So thinking, are you thinking more like publisher business models or sort of brands and advertisers?
Yeah, thinking more publisher side, like their ability to reach customers across, let's say like a beyond, let's say is I'm trying to understand kind of like in your experience, how much did you see like a partner be able to um, reach users across Europe, across Spain, France, Italy, Germany, etc., rather than just be focused on Germany as an example.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of publishers find that very, very difficult because you've got the translations, and sometimes, depending what your website is called, if it's a sort of if the name of your business is got a word in it like cashback, that word is very different in those different countries. So again, when people are searching for it, what will rank in Google will be very different. And there are those and lots of publishers, they build up communities and they start generally quite locally. It might be to a region or to a country, and they'll get famous in there. So sort of each country has sort of its loyalties to its to those businesses that have come up. So it is very difficult as a publisher to go to one publisher that will cover all of Europe. I've not found.
Yeah,
I'm struggling to think of one that would cover that. Um, and interestingly, I was speaking to a partner earlier today, actually, to do, and this is in the sort of cycling world. It was a cycling federation. So Movistar has a cycling team that they compete in the Tour de France and things like that. Their audience is predominantly Spanish, but also Latin America. So they have that sort of, even the geographically very, very far apart, is sort of culturally similar because of the language. So that's sort of a fairly unique case, but it sort of shows that sometimes that, just because a country is right next door to each other, that they think, oh, they'll be able to influence that audience. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, because you'd like to think, maybe if you're sat in the US, think, oh, let's crack America. What's the big European publisher that can speak to all of them? I can't really think of one that does. Probably the closest you would
yeah,
get is a publisher, like I suppose Global Savings Group, that has bought properties in each of those regions and can give you some degree of, if I onboard with them, they can onboard in all of those different countries, or they can give some
yeah,
localized solutions. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
yeah.
Going
No,
global, going pan European. Yeah,
that makes sense. It's super interesting. You know, it kind of brings up the thought of like the ideal partner mix. It's something that, I've talked about in my newsletter, and we run into it in all programs we look at, and we look under the hood and see kind of a mix of partner types and publisher business models, like you said. I know we haven't talked a lot about this yet in recent terms, but what are you kind of seeing in that sense, and like maybe with some of the examples you've had, you've obviously had so many great learnings in your career, various, advertiser brand programs, but what's like a mix that you feel, or maybe some observations you have on the mix, from a UK perspective, or some of the program types that you've had? I'm curious to learn more about that because I kind of have some barometers. We've talked about it. It's come up recently with the PMA, and PMA is having that kind of like survey where they're trying to get more insights into, partner mixes and how brands are approaching it. But
yeah.
sorry for the long intro, but what are you kind of seeing with partner mix?
So it's very often brand specific. So because when I think about so currently where I work with Zwift as a business, we've never really done any discounting. So for us, it doesn't make sense to do extensive work within the coupon sector, for example. So we predominantly do, and because our product is quite complicated for a lot of people, indoor cycling is quite a new topic. It inherently is one that requires quite a lot of explanation. So it naturally lends itself to things like editorial content and video and influencers. So the sort of the makeup of our program, although it's a very new affiliate program, only launched in September, that's the mix that's probably going to work best for us. And we will test things like cashback and some of the more conversion focused ones as well. Um, but I sort of generally find the mix. I suppose the golden rule is to try and aim for as much diversity as possible. So not over relying on any one business model or over relying on any one partner too much. Um, but then it's sort of a horses for courses, if you like, in terms of the mix. I think there's always a danger if, way too much of, if 80% of your program is coming from just coupon code, I'd say that would definitely be a red flag. Um, then there needs to be that diversity in there with, certainly content and influencers. But affiliates is so broad now anyway. You think about technology partners as well. They're all doing very, very different things for that brand. If you think it's either it's bringing new customers, then you've got um, different types of partners that can do that. Then you've got partners that are great at converting things maybe on your site, and so on. So yeah, it's very difficult to give a kind of one answer to that. I think each
Yeah,
brand needs to think about where it is in its sort of journey, what's its product,
yeah,
what does it need its
yeah,
affiliate program to do for it? Some brands are very mature, got loads of brand awareness out there, and they look at their affiliate program as we want you to convert our audience that is aware from all of our other activities. Some brands will say we want affiliates to do all of it, or to be involved in all of it. So it's yeah, I think it's quite
yeah.
difficult to give sort of a one size fits all.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unfair question, but I think it's cool because the audience can understand how you think about it. You're thinking it from a very, brand centric, customized way. You're not just applying a templated approach, which I think people get into problems with.
Yeah.
Maybe you keep, obviously your focus is Zwift right now. Maybe give us a little bit of background on just the business and what it does. And for consumers who are curious, like I think it's really cool to just dig into that a little bit because that's where a lot of your focus is right now. And I think people would be super interested to learn more about the brand.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I started with Zwift in February, and I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of it before I started. It's very much, but it's within, so it's within the cycling world. So if you're into cycling, road biking, mountain biking, and triathletes, Zwift is a huge brand. So it's indoor cycling. So the idea is that you sort of during the summer months you're probably out on your bike, but during the winter months when it's cold, you want to be indoor training. Now in the old days that was on a sort of an old exercise bike, and you'd be staring at your wall just pedaling away, bored out of your mind. So what Zwift aims to do is make indoor cycling fun. So the product itself is it's an app, it's a game, it's a virtual world, and there's hardware and equipment that is sort of connects what you're pedaling into what's going on in the game. So you've got races. It's a it's a massively social platform as well. So you've got clubs and communities and other riders. You can race just for fun. You can do races. There are professional Zwifters. There's all sorts of different ways on there, but essentially what you've got is somebody indoors, probably in a little office like my room here, maybe their garage, or they call it a pain cave. So this is how people. Some people use it to train for their road biking in the real world. Some people are exclusively indoor cycling and Zwifters. When you think about esports is massive.
Yeah,
So it's sort
yeah,
of it does kind of all of those sorts of things. And some
yeah,
of the really interesting things about it, one of the challenging things about it is there's quite a high barrier to entry in terms of cost, the gear, the equipment. So one of the things that Zwift is really trying to do is bring that barrier to entry down, bringing the cost of equipment down, and some of the products that we've released very recently and over the last couple of years have really aimed to do that. Because for us, what matters is getting people Zwifting, getting people onto the game, and having fun, and that's how our business works really. So if
yeah,
we can give people a low cost entry product that's a great product,
yeah.
that's going to get them on there. But it's yeah.
I love it. It's super fascinating. I'm not a huge cyclist, but I know people who are specifically, and we have a ton of them in Austin. I know coming from the Bay Area, California, it was a huge community. It's really really fascinating. It's like almost like the Peloton thing, but way more focused on the real hardcore cyclists, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Peloton would probably be more focused on, I suppose, it's more like a spin class. So it's probably, CrossFitters,
Yeah,
that sort of thing. Zwift is much more focused on road cyclists,
yeah,
triathletes, and because the experience is kind of gamified, and there's sort of new features come out now, you can get power ups and things like that. So yeah, it's a very different kind of audience. But yeah, if people are following Tour de France right now, depending on where
yeah,
you are in the world, you might start to see some Zwift adverts. You'll see some Zwift logos
yeah,
around that, and yeah, it's sort of what I've sort of said.
yeah.
It feels
I,
like it's the biggest thing I'd never heard of, and it's
I
massive.
bet
Yeah.
it, do you find there's people that are entering with Swift and then becoming a cyclist, or is it always people that are like always a pretty experienced cyclist that adopt Swift?
It's a bit about. I think it's changing. So I think
Hmm.
much earlier in the company's journey, it was much more the latter of existing cyclists who want something more convenient. So if you imagine to train for a road cycle event, it's hours out on the bike somewhere, and if you live in the middle of New York City, how are you going to do that? Or middle of New York City during the winter, do you really want to get on a road bike for several hours? It's just not convenient or realistic for people to do it. So this gave them a really fun, exciting, compelling way of doing that in their garage. But as the barrier to entries come down and as the Zwift brand has grown, as our products have got a bit more friendlier to outsiders, it's kind of coming the other way now. So we are starting to see more people discover Zwift as people probably come from more of a fitness mindset, saying I need to do more cardio, and there's lots of options. There's Peloton, or I could go running, and people are discovering Zwift as this looks like a fun way that I can do my exercise at home, and discovering that way. So yeah, I think it's definitely changing.
I love it. That's really interesting. It seems like a really cool niche offering. It seems like the price point is really compelling, and I can see where it's big. Are you seeing adoption like bigger in certain regions? Obviously, you've got. I'm curious to know more about like where it's available and where you're seeing the most customer adoption geographically.
Yeah, I think geographically. So I mean, Zwift, as in the app, the game, it is available globally. So we have every most countries sort of covered. But where we're sort of, I mean, Zwift is a US business, and where it's strongest broadly follows where that cycling enthusiast audience is. So it's going to be the US, UK, Europe. So you think about in Europe where the big cycling events are in France, in Italy, in Spain. Uh, that's where we see the biggest sort of penetration. But it's really growing in places like Australia as well. We've definitely got people, in China, all over Asia. But it's sort of it definitely follows this sort of cycling as a sport where those people are. So yeah, if there's a country that is showing Tour de France on the TV, it's probably got a strong Zwift customer base there. But in terms of sort of where we're shipping currently, it's definitely US, UK, and Europe is where we're mainly focused.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, curious to learn more. I could see it being massive with the cycling community in areas where they certainly have limitations to when they can ride, and I like that you're kind of seeing that transferring conversion both sides, like people that are new to cycling or people that are experienced at cycling. It's happening. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Are you obviously the content influencer is kind of taking over our world? What other kind of like macro trends are you seeing in affiliate marketing that are notable for you and the brand, or maybe just learnings that you've had recently in terms of tests and experiments? I'd love to hear more about maybe your thoughts on those verticals because they've become so important and powerful recently, and but also curious about other macro observations that you're seeing in the space.
Yeah, so I think as a macro observation, there was written an article early in the year actually about coupon codes more generally, and it was sort of more as an observation that there are I think they're under the traditional coupon code publisher being under threat from lots of different angles of how brands are managing their code strategies. So there's so many more solutions now where people don't have to leave the brand's website to go and get a code and come back. So you're seeing more brands working with each other. So in the basket, so people like MyProtein are doing that. I think quite a lot of other brands are now having their own coupon codes on their site. So there are partners that will give them the technology to do that, and some of those codes might be for specific audiences. So it could be for students or healthcare workers or veterans and things like that. And brands doing more of the loyalty points and things like that. So I think there's a general trend of more solutions around offers and offer management that are very different from those public coupon sites. And while there are a lot of very good coupon sites out there, there are a lot of bad ones as well. So anyone that manages an affiliate program is probably getting applications from dozens of coupon code sites a week. So there's a lot of them out there. But I would say, generally speaking, there are other solutions that brands are looking at that are very different to that. So that's a sort of a broad trend that I've seen. But brand to brand seems to be gaining quite a lot of traction. So sometimes that's it's just two complementary brands saying, "Hey, we've got audiences we're both interested in. What's the best way that we can work together and exchange value so we can exchange those audiences." And I think that's the beauty of affiliate, and this is why it's sort of, you could argue it's not strictly speaking affiliate. Maybe we're not paying a commission to that other brand, but the fundamentals are there. It's, I'm working for a brand, I've got an audience I'm interested in, how can I acquire that audience, and being really open-minded about how I do that. So brand to brand's getting really interesting. Technology partners as well, which is a sort of again, you probably wouldn't think about that as being affiliate at all. It's really conversion optimization tools. The only thing that makes it affiliate is you pay on performance, and it's so there's a lot of these solutions and ways of thinking about things that really giving people a lot of different ways of, I suppose, making e-commerce work best for their brand. And it's sort of thinking, is affiliate a channel? I think that was a debate that you had with another guest on the podcast, Tom. And it isn't, or affiliate at least is lots of different channels. The only thing that unites them all is that pay on performance model.
Yeah,
It's thinking
yeah.
much more
It.
broadly about how
I.
you acquire an audience.
I love that. It's. I think that's why I've been drawn to it. I think that's why a lot of people are. There's just so many levers to pull. You can be so much more diverse. All your eggs aren't in like the meta basket. Um, it's full funnel. It's multi-channel. It's a lot of really interesting aspects. You almost get to play this head of customer acquisition, VP of marketing, VP of growth kind of role where it's like, hey, I can do a lot within this channel because it's a payment method
Yeah,
than rather than an inventory source. And I think that's a really great way of thinking about it, what you've highlighted. And yeah, like a lot of the debunking the myths of coupon is really cool too, that you talked about earlier around, hey, there's a lot of ways to reach the deal promotional space world in a way that's valuable and not just like, oh, it's a race to the bottom. It's cheapskates trying to get discounts on things and like undercut. There's a lot of ways that it can be positioned right for some brands. Obviously, not all brands, but
yeah. And I think it
there's a
gives.
lot there to chew on.
Yeah, and I think those newer solutions, it's a lot of them, it's about the brands getting control of where those offers are. Which audiences am I happy to give an offer to, and which audiences am I not? What's that experience? And one of the observations that's made it a previous brand was it was a brand that did lots of couponing anyway, but it was 80% of the people that were in basket on our website left to get a coupon code from another from it went to search the brand coupon code, then came back. 80% of transactions. So then you think about your customer journey about, okay, how much of that am I controlling? They go off, maybe they'll discover a competing brand and you'll lose them altogether, but you're losing them, they're going away, coming back with a code, you're incurring the commission. So as a brand, you don't want that to happen. You want to keep your customer right there in the basket, right where you want them. If there's somebody you want to give them an offer, then you want to be in control of that. So there's more and more solutions for brands. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens within Coupon. I'm sure they'll evolve and adapt. They're great businesses and well funded, but yeah, it's an interesting one for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love where you're at with that. In terms of how you've kind of taken on the management of a program for, for the ZIFs, for the totems of the world, like maybe are there other things that you think are exciting or interesting to maybe share to the audience around like how you might approach it, um, or maybe some other like learnings or observations you've had in other programs that you've managed since you've had exposure to so many in the brand side and the agency side.
Yeah, just the one that comes to mind was when I was at Totem, which is a student discount platform, and for the most part, that is giving offers away with a code to a verified audience. But we also did quite a lot of content. So we had an Instagram channel with obviously an audience of students, and we would do video content for brands. So brands would say, we want to reach student audiences, and we'd obviously do the student discount bit, but we'd also do the social media bit. And we started off doing quite glossy production videos. They were amazing. They were quite expensive to do. They're great fun to produce and put out there. Out just lipsticks and lip glosses and mascaras, and she just filmed it with her phone. It was about a 10-second clip, and it outperformed those glossy videos by more than 10 times. Easy. And some of those things, when you just realize it's like that power of something that is that feels more peer-to-peer, user generated, that authenticity when you put it on a social channel was a real eye opener. I mean, that was a few years ago now, and maybe that's sort of old hat thinking, but it was something that really sort of makes you think about how can you know when you're thinking about when you're investing in media, that sort of or the old way of thinking is this is an ad, it has to look amazing and slick and everything, but actually something that was very off the cuff, felt like for that audience it felt like it was one of them. That was really interesting, and something that you try and encourage. How do you encourage an authentic experience between
Yeah,
a social creator and your brand? And it's gold when you can get it right. It's
yeah,
difficult to get it right.
yeah.
But yeah, that
I
was an interesting
I
one.
think that's spot on. I mean, it's definitely hitting us across a number of things. We're seeing the trend. We're seeing like the thought of like authenticity and ugly ads or user generated content and making it very like a trusted voice and like a friend or family member or someone with a degree of influence to kind of say, hey, check this out, this is what I liked about it, this is what I didn't like about it. Having it
Yeah,
be very real is something that I think everyone's kind of caught on to and seen, so it's cool to just hear your validation on it. Know that that's what you saw firsthand in the data. It's good to validate, and
yeah.
surprisingly surprised to see some brands that are kind of still trying to catch that curve, and they're a little bit late to that wave. And it's cool to hear that you saw it firsthand and witnessed it.
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think as well, the way people are discovering products and researching products, they're not going to Google and searching keywords and discovering the best ranked articles and things like that. I mean, Google recent changes are causing people a lot of problems. Some affiliates are losing positions, others are gaining positions. But I think when I think about my kids' age, they're probably. I'd be amazed if they even use Google. They'll probably go to TikTok and search that way, and or YouTube, and that will be the where they start their journey of which indoor cycling trainer should I
Yeah,
buy, or you know or which guitar should I buy. It's and is it going to be the glossy production thing that comes from the brand, or is it going to be somebody who looks like them, talks like them, saying, what, I've had this guitar for 6 months and it's awesome. Which one are they going to trust? So yeah, it's definitely
yeah,
going to be an interesting one, and it's obviously it's a fairly obvious trend. I'm sure everyone's aware of it, but it's interesting when you get into sort of the reasons why that is the direction of it. It'll be interesting to see how Google changes and evolves, what sort of results it's going to
yeah.
start pulling in, because I think it's going to be quite different in 5 years. A lot more video, I imagine.
Agree, agree. We've had some really interesting conversations and uh, seen it too around like TikTok's taking up more and more search share on a lot of people are starting their queries there. They're learning, they're getting educated. Um, Reddit's coming up a lot more. Maybe talking about the search landscape. What are you seeing in data? What are you seeing in learnings? Are there um, we reported some interesting declines in some of the content sites. A lot of the high quality ones that are kind of hitting on what Google's looking for on the algorithm are just fine and growing, but certainly some are getting hit pretty hard. But what are you kind of observing in your landscape in terms of the Google, SEO, paid search, content site impact? Is there anything that you're observing that's interesting, or what else are you kind of seeing in that world?
Yeah, to be honest with you, we're not really seeing anything, and it's the main reason at the moment. So right now, this is our sort of the low season with Zwift. So the first time we'll probably see any difference is when we start hitting our peak period and we compare peak period this year versus last year. So, and because the affiliate program is brand new as well, I've got no year-on-year data, so I'm quite
Yeah,
blind at the moment to what those
yeah,
things are. But most of the content sites that we work with, when you sort of read about the changes in Google, they should, in theory, if anything, gain share in theory, but we know that the theory doesn't always match with what happens out there. So it's a conversation we're constantly having with the partners because I'm having to plan for Q4 right now and knowing that the search landscape is evolving all of the time. So normally when you like to book media and what's my guaranteed page views, it suddenly becomes very difficult because the rug could get pulled from under them from an algorithm update.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
something that we're trying to monitor, but what I don't have is that sort of the history of the
yeah,
data where I can say, yeah, year on year on year,
yeah,
this is how it's looking. So it's
yeah.
a tricky one for me.
No, totally. And I think like even brands that have that historical knowledge are having a hard time in this vastly changing market, like benchmarking and thinking about, okay, are we comparing it to 2019? Are we
Mm.
comparing it to 2021? Like things are changing drastically. The last few years have been very behaved differently. So even those with some of that data, not to like be overly optimistic about your situation, but in some ways you might be at an advantage in some ways with lack of data. Obviously, it's better to have something to go off of. I also like what you said about the um, you're kind of always if you step back and think about what we're trying to do, these trends are always coming in, right? And if you're managing Meta or TikTok or Google, you get to kind of stay in that lane and think about all the changes that are happening in that channel, which is often the case with a brand.
Yeah,
With affiliate, going back to the positives that we talked about, I feel like there's so many more signals because you have to think about the S curve of each individual business model. You have to think about the S curve of all of those channels that are working. So if Google's seeing gains or a hit in a particular category, that's impacting, affiliate. If perhaps a particular, loyalty vertical is getting, hit, or there's competitors coming into that space, that's impacting the ebb and flow of the diversity and the volume of your affiliate program.
Yeah.
We're seeing, like, Reddit strikes a deal with Google. That's helping out with certain affiliate partners, or maybe taking away. So it's this interesting for people coming into this, either marketers or not, or heavy performance marketers, they get it. But like, I think there's actually, in some ways, it can be simpler, but there's also a lot of variables going on within an affiliate channel, especially as it matures and gets that volume. I don't know if you feel that way too, but I think it's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're buying media or you're trying to plan, like I am right now planning for Q4, which is our peak, and obviously Black Friday. A lot of people in the industry they rely on historic trends and data to inform. Okay, well, this worked last year, so I'll invest in it this year. But it might be that something that worked well last year is just going to flop. So newspapers that were using coupons that were having a white label solution and offering that, those have been hit by Google. So, they're not going to get the same levels of traffic that they were this time last year. So it's really important that when affiliate managers or planners or buyers, when they're looking at the historic trends, is make sure that you're looking at these other changes in the industry. Where does your publisher get their traffic from? And if they're beholden to Meta or to Google and things like that, what's going on there? Because again, the rug could get pulled
Yeah,
from you. So it's
I,
you've got to be,
yeah,
yes, looking back, because sometimes historic data can be reliable, but you've got to be looking forward as well, and to say, oh, maybe the variables are going to change.
yeah, yeah. It's diversification is the name of the game.
Yeah.
It gets talked about a lot. It's an easy thing to say, and obviously the work and effort and planning and measurement of it is a whole nother story. It's not that easy. You know it better than anyone, having managed so many great programs in your career. Speaking of your career,
Yeah.
what was a sliding door moment for you where it was kind of like, hey, it could go one way, you took another path, kind of the learnings from that?
Yeah, I think probably it was when I look back. I think getting to work on the eBay program was probably the big one for me, and I very nearly screwed that up. So I was when I started at ROI, I was running. We had so it was just before the financial crash of 2008. So we had subprime loans clients. It was very lucrative. But it's very, very low tech. There was no product feeds or APIs. It was very much, we sometimes had people going door to door and then clicking on affiliate link and filling the details out on behalf of somebody at the door. It was that low tech, but very lucrative. And then 2008 happened. That entire industry just vanished, really. But it was at the same year that ROI won the eBay account. So there was an opportunity where I think somebody'd left the eBay team and they were quite junior and I was a bit more senior. So the company said, we're looking for someone else to go into that team. And I was like, well, I don't really want to go down a level. So I didn't apply for it. And then my boss pulled me into a room and said, hey, Rich, if you thought about this? And I was like, well, I'd love to. And anyway, he said, actually, I put on the email that current seniority would be respected. So, you wouldn't drop a level. I was like, I missed that sentence from the email. Like, and if he hadn't sort of pulled me into the room and say, I think you should go for this, I could have missed out on it. And what I learned on managing the eBay partner network and the experiences I had referring to earlier, first time working on something that was outside of the UK, so getting to travel into Europe and spending time in Zurich, and you meet people from all over the world. Like the conversation you had with mentioned about someone explaining, well, in Italy this is how it works, and in Spain this is how it works, and in Germany, and getting to spend time with you guys who kept flew over from the US as well, and it was just from my initial year or two, just working on subprime finance loans and leads, to then going to eBay, and we're learning about APIs, and I don't know if you remember the quality click pricing and all of that, and all of the commercials that
All
sort of
too
went.
well.
Yeah, you probably still have PTSD about it, but it was fascinating stuff, and it was so yeah, it was
Oh
my
man,
yeah, and it was amazing. So it took me, I think travelled into Europe, travelled to the US, met so many people, and that was the real foundation, I think, of the career that I've built. And as I said, I very nearly, for the sake of not properly reading an email, could have missed out. And thank you to my boss at the time for pulling me into
yeah.
a room and yeah,
Well,
making sure I read
what
it
a great lesson. What a great story. I'm sure so mutually beneficial that, you know, he was so helpful in kind of shedding light on it for you, and obviously a door opener and a sliding door moment in your career that went so well. I couldn't agree more, man. I it opened up so many the world of like high rigor Silicon Valley multi-channel marketing. Like it was, I probably said it too many times. People may eye roll, but like the level of quality talent coming out of that group at the time when it was happening was really second to none. I'm just very fortunate, and I think, like you, it really opened my world up in many ways, and
yeah,
it was such an amazing learning experience. So it was cool, and heck, here we are talking today because I got to meet you through that experience. So
yeah, yeah. Made some great connections.
I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more. Yeah. Is there a book or a resource that you would point for folks that maybe was really impactful on you in a positive way, or changed your thinking on a topic?
Yeah, there's what I tell you. I'm probably not. I'm not one of these people that sort of reads a lot of. Um, I don't do a lot of work stuff outside work. Maybe I need to do a bit more. So I
That's
do.
good.
Yeah. So most of the time outside work, it's football and guitars and all that sort of stuff. But there was one topic that was obviously is really big at the moment is AI. And I'm not one of these people that jumps onto these things, and I'm not like an AI bro or anything like that. And I'm always a little bit skeptical, when people say AI is going to take over affiliates, and I was thinking, well, is it going to be negotiating deals? Is it going to be recruiting affiliates? Like, what is it going to do? And it was a podcast. I think it was an AWIN podcast. They had a guest on it, Rob Beresford, who runs affiliate.ai. Um, but he was explaining about actually it's more about that productivity thing. So the sort of thing he said. Imagine if you the reporting, the amount of data that exists, within an affiliate program that is just laying there, not being accessed to by people because it's just too difficult, time consuming, and the amount of time I spent downloading spreadsheets from an affiliate network, from Google Analytics, trying to smush it all together, fiddling around with the date formats that don't match up, and then trying to kind of analyze what's coming into the website and then what's coming after the transaction. And if you could have all of that data fed into sort of an AI computer sort of thing, and just ask it, prompts as you would in Chat GPT, and the amount of time that it would save and what that would do, and it would take away that sort of the skill of having to learn Excel, and the time it takes to do all of that. And it really just got me thinking about this. That would really, really help a lot of people in this industry, I think, being able to have access to data with just real word prompts. Tell me if you're a publisher, what's the most lucrative journey on our website? And like a Chat GPT experience, you can say, right, it can spit it all out for you rather than going and have to download multiple spreadsheets. And so I think it's got the power to really remove a lot of barriers to good data. The barriers being skill set, barrier being time, and then with that information being able to do something really meaningful with it. So it sort of really made me think very differently about, is this AI thing just a bit of a fad that people are just going to rave about, but actually how is it in the real world going to help us? So yeah, that was really got me thinking about it. And yeah, I'm still it's still very early days for that sort of thing. I haven't got to play with anything like that yet, but it really did get me thinking, wow, that could be really powerful.
I
Um,
love that. I love that. I've heard great things. I think our team is kind of doing some collaboration with them currently, and I love that one. I think there's a lot more to do there, and I think some of the things they're coming out with is it's material change. It's not, you know, well, we could do a whole episode on that topic. I think
yeah,
because there's a lot there, and I'm really glad you brought it up.
yeah. So I
Um,
think it's how
should
can we
I
do our jobs better rather than how can our jobs be replaced? I think that's the key.
exactly?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's augmentation. I think it's efficiency. I think, I think yeah, lots to talk about there, and definitely we could go way deep on that. We probably
yeah,
should at one point. I love it.
yeah,
Um, just rounding out, Richard, it's been a pleasure, man. I know you've
yeah.
had
Like,
some really great learnings in your career. You've shared some great history and story and thoughts of how you think about the industry and affiliate marketing and doing it the right way. I think there's a humility and a thoughtfulness and a craft about how you approach affiliate marketing that I want to call out. And I think that comes through with how you operate and how you speak about it and just the way you work. And you've always been one to just get things done. And I think that's something that to make sure people are aware of. You have a strategy, you have an experience, but there's a no frills respect about how you approach the work, which I think is important to call out for everyone.
no, thank you. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. In kind of rounding out the pod and as we talk about, got through some of the learnings and the always be testing theme, obviously, but what's a fun, silly fact that maybe people don't know about you? You kind of touched on, little football guitars, but love to
Yeah.
hear just what do you want to share with the audience about you?
Um, yeah, I was thinking about this one. I suppose probably most people know I play guitar because they're always in the background of my thing. But yeah, I don't know whether it's fun or silly, but I'm a bit of a space geek. I love learning about space, the cosmos, the universe, all that sort of thing. I find that absolutely fascinating. I've always got some sort of going to sleep at night. I've got a space documentary on. Just just love it. Just thinking about how
That's so
planets were
cool.
formed, is the universe infinite, all that sort of thing. I just, yeah, absolutely, I can't get enough of it.
I love that, man. That's very cool. That can get pretty fascinating as you dive into it, and I love to learn and hear that that's something that you're into.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Any space fact that you want to drop on us, or anything about space in particular that you found fascinating in your learnings or the documentaries you've had? Any recommendations?
Yeah, there's one. It's sort of a space fact, but it's sort of a mathematics one as well, and it's the implications of infinity. So you think, is the universe infinite? And
Oh,
mathematically, it's saying that somewhere, if the universe is infinite, that there is somebody exact, a complete replica of me and you having this conversation out there somewhere, and that's a mathematical fact of infinity. Because if you think about the infinite monkey theorem, you've got 26 letters of the alphabet, and an infinite number of monkeys are going to type out the works of Shakespeare. Each one of those letters is like an element on the periodic table. So your body is just an assembly of atoms and an element. So if the universe is infinite, eventually that will be replicated. And that is a really mind-blowing fact, and it is scientific, but it's yeah. So when you're
I think we have the perfect GIF when we post this episode. We're gonna have the GIF of the guy's head just exploding with the space. That just I I think I had this is such a weird overshare, but like as a kid, I remember being about 10 and like you're kind of going through life and thinking about what does it mean, and thinking about the universe. And if you ever had this where you're like thinking about how far it stretches and how vast it is, and it almost sends you into a little bit of a spinning loop in your brain, and it's actually a bit frightening because you think I can't really describe it. I'm not going to be able to put words to the feeling and the mix of emotion and brain
Yeah.
uh, thought that comes up. But I remember that feeling of holy cow, what if it is ever ending? Or what if it ends? And it's like this crazy epiphany that your mind starts to go down this rabbit hole, and you're just like, wait, what? It's like it's very difficult for a human brain to sometimes
Yeah.
wrap your head around. But I think it's so cool that you've kind of gone there and you shared that today. It's a
Yeah.
weird thing. It's cool.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those things that if you're like me, when you're trying to get to sleep and your brain's racing with all of, work stuff, family stuff, or, all of the jobs and chores you haven't done. And then you start thinking about pondering those things. And it just kind of, because it's such a vast subject that your brain can't really
Yeah,
think about, oh, I need to mow the lawn. So it does actually help me sleep,
yeah,
just pondering these things. So it's quite a good
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
yeah, mental
Uh,
well-being
uh,
kind of thing.
I actually think that's awesome. I came across a tweet or something recently that had something similar. I think as we get into adult life and all the stressors of day to day and all the BS that comes at us, it was if I find it, I'll share it with you. But it's like, we're a rock going across the galaxy and universe at X speed, and you're
Yeah,
worried about this over here. It's something along those lines, and I think it kind of
like
does
perspective sort of
can
thing.
can can put you at peace. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little perspective.
Yeah.
Um, what's is there any fun little thing that you've maybe purchased recently that you can't live without that you want to share with the audience?
Well, I've had it for a couple of years actually, but during a video, I'll show it to you. But basically, this is a desktop guitar amp, which is beautiful.
Oh
So,
yeah,
so
it
this
is
thing
very.
is
It's awesome looking.
yeah, and it's so perfect for my exact use case. So you don't want a big guitar amp in a very small room with a family. So you want something that's not too loud, super high quality, but it's also a Bluetooth speaker. So I can do everything with this. So all day I have this set up there with the music going, my Alexa plugged into it, got my guitar plugged into it. I'm not disturbing the family too much if I'm rocking out with the guitar. But it's just one of
Oh
those
my
products that
gosh.
I bought, and it looks so nice that we actually decorated this room to complement it. So if people are just listening, it's a small unit Bluetooth speaker. It's kind of like metal, retro looking, kind of cream, and yeah, we've got sort of copper tones and blue, and it looks amazing in the office, and it's just one of those products that I'm just like, every time I look at it, I think that's the perfect thing for what I
Yeah,
needed. It does everything, and it looks awesome. So
pretty clean, pretty minimal, pretty attractive piece, and it functions well. That's awesome.
exactly, yeah. I mean, so much things with the musical equipment, it's cables and things all over the place, getting dusty and stuff, which yeah, could do with the dust
What's the
actually.
brand?
It's a Yamaha. So it's called a Yamaha THR. But
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
they're definitely good if you play guitar. I think it'll also play. You can play bass through it as well. I think, but it's just a great thing to have, and
For the rock stars out there in the
exactly.
audience.
And you know what? I researched it on social channels and YouTube, and I listened to all the influencers talking about it, and I probably clicked one of their links when I bought it.
There you go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's all happening. Richard, you're the man. I need to hear you rock out on the guitar one of these days. I'm sure we'll get to do that maybe in London or maybe somewhere in the UK.
Yeah.
But just want to thank you again. You've got a wealth of knowledge. We covered a ton of ground. For folks that want to stay in touch with you and follow you, where's the best way to connect?
I'm probably on LinkedIn. I'll be honest, I don't put out a lot of stuff on LinkedIn myself, but I'm more of a lurker, which is like I'll comment on other people's posts. But yeah, LinkedIn is
We
probably
want
the
that.
best place, and yeah, always happy to connect with people, even if there's not necessarily an immediate opportunity or sale that needs to be done. It's just great to
Yep.
connect because things change and you never know. Um, but yeah, be happy to hear from anyone. But yeah,
100%.
LinkedIn,
100%. Always a pleasure, Richard. It's great to talk to
likewise.
you, and I'm so happy to have you on. Thank you so much, and have an awesome evening.
Yeah, great. Thank you too for the opportunity, and yeah, we'll speak soon, Ty.
Sounds good.